everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the
Geek Buddies!
Hey! Well, we're back at it, ladies and gentlemen, with our main show here on the Geek Buddies. We're excited to be diving in to some new trailers, to some news about the He-Man movie, and getting into some Marvel stuff, and offering our tribute to the late, great James Earl Jones, who we lost earlier this week. So this is going to be a good episode, a little bit of sadness, but overall fun conversations going on, and maybe some battles, which I think you guys should look forward to as well here on this particular show. But let's introduce ourselves. I am John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies.
I am Michael Vogel, writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies, and can't wait for these battles about James Earl Jones' best films.
And this is Shannon McClung. I'm an animation writer and a television actor, and I just had an audition for a very big project. Very small role, but in a very big project.
Nice.
Johnny, I'll have to tell you what it is after we stop recording, because
yes,
it could be really cool.
That's awesome. I love this idea. I love that you're going to London to be in Slow Horses season 5. I love that.
That's it.
Because this season has been. I watched the whole season. It's incredible. If you guys haven't watched the new season, definitely start on it. But it's a great season all the way to the end. So just giving love to that show.
Jonathan Lamb, Jackson's son.
Jackson's son. That's right. Anyway, all right. So let's get into things. The way the show works is each of us brings up a geek news item. We talk about it amongst ourselves, take a couple of breaks, and then get into our main geek news item, which is all the stuff going on in the world of Marvel this week. So Shannon, actually Michael, I think you take it away first.
Guys, last week we talked about Allison Brie getting cast as Evelyn in the He-Man movie. And Johnny said that she was playing the lead villain in the He-Man movie, and we pointed out that Evelyn is not the lead villain in He-Man, that the lead villain is everybody's favorite gay icon, Skeletor. And apparently, according to the Outlaw's good friend Jeff Schneider, the offer is out. There is interest in Jared Leto joining the He-Man team as Skeletor himself. So, as we said, he'll be joining Allison Brie as Evelyn, Nicholas Galitzine as He-Man, and Camila Mendez as Teela. And if you didn't grow up in the 80s, those names probably don't mean a lot to you. But if you did grow up in the 80s, you know who these people are. But none of us know what the fuck this movie is going to be. And the announcement that Jared Leto may be Skeletor elicited some responses on social media. A lot of people referring to Jared Leto as the franchise killer, and saying of the casting, do they not want people to see this movie? Nobody denies that Jared Leto is actually a very good actor. He has done some amazing performances. But it has to be said that when Jared Leto enters a franchise movie, be it as the Joker, be it as Morbius, it doesn't go great for that franchise. So will Skeletor be 3 strikes and you're out? Or is this the role that he has been waiting for? I know Johnny has a lot of thoughts on this He-Man film. And I'm curious, gentlemen, what do you think about the Leto of it all?
Shannon, why don't you go first and I'll jump in.
Well, you know what's funny is, this, like I guess he's not officially signed, that the offer is out to him. In this age where in the information age where we hear about offers going out to actors and the actors not taking those offers, much like we just heard about with Josh Brolin and Matthew McConaughey with Hal Jordan,
which we'll get to later on in the show. Yeah.
Jared Leto is one of those names that I've never heard him turn anything down. Like, I'm sure this has happened at some point, that an offer has gone out and he read the script. He just didn't take to it. But it's not a story that I feel like I've ever heard before. And I think people do have fun poking fun at Jared Leto. But when you look at the films that he has been a part of, minus his Academy Award winning turn in Dallas Buyers Club, it really seems like Jared Leto really wants to be in a big franchise movie. Like he really wants to be a part of this, because when you look at Suicide Squad, when you look at Morbius, allegedly he was campaigning heavily to play Doctor Strange. He's also going to be in Tron Ares, the next entry in the Tron franchise. That could potentially be his third strike. And Master of the Universe could be his next at bat. But it's you can't ever argue the fact that he doesn't commit to a role. You might be able to argue the results of that commitment. But he never half-asses anything. Like he pours his whole artistic soul into that role. Again, how it's going to turn out, we'll see. But part of me feels like this might actually be ridiculously cheesy fun with him playing Skeletor. Again, it could be an absolute train wreck, and it seemed like it could be a train wreck before he signed on.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of curious. I mean, in terms of actors playing this iconic role, I'm actually kind of curious what Jared Leto would bring to Skeletor.
Yeah, I mean, as Michael pointed out, I have a lot of thoughts because I do like Jared as an actor. I mean, not just Dallas Buyers Club, just the smaller parts he played in Fight Club, in American Psycho. Like he's definitely, and of course, people who grew up enjoying his one season of My So-Called Life. There's a lot that he's done that's really interesting. The recent We Crashed series on Apple TV, I think it's Apple TV.
He's great.
He was fantastic in that show. And so was Anne Hathaway, obviously. They both were really great in that show. So that's the thing that's interesting to me, is that he is a legitimately damn good actor. But Michael is also right in bringing up the franchise killer thing, because he left off also Blade Runner 2049, which underperformed in the box office. So there are quite a few franchises that he's been a part of where the films themselves haven't been well received, or they've underperformed at the box office, or both. So it's an interesting situation. He's like the feature film Ted McGinley. You get him when it's all over. You get him when the series is on its last legs, and you want to see if maybe he can revitalize it, and he can't. And so my concern here, though, and I do have a concern. That being said, though, if this is a cheesy, campy, out there kind of thing, we've certainly seen him play or try to play these kinds of roles. And I didn't mind his Joker as much as other people didn't mind his Joker, but I certainly didn't like his Morbius. Matt Smith completely outacted him. Why don't you offer it to Matt Smith? He'd be a great Skeletor. And then seeing what he's going to do with this, though, I'm just confused where this film is going, because this feels like we're rehashing Mortal Kombat. No. We're taking a more serious approach. It's going to be fun. We're going to go back to the bones. We're going to understand what we're talking about. And then it's going to crash and burn again, just like this recent Mortal Kombat movie.
Except that, so Travis Knight, as we talked about last week, who's directing the movie, as Shannon pointed out, Kubo and the Lost Strings, stop motion animated film from Laika, one of the better of the Laika films, and the Laika films are pretty strong overall. And then did Bumblebee, which, again, not a box office smash for Paramount and Hasbro, but most people feel that as successful as Michael Bay's Transformers movies were, Bumblebee and the relationship between Bee and Haley Steinfeld was stronger than a lot of the emotional stuff that had been happening. So I do think there is the air of like, okay, there's something. The other thing I would point out that I think is important to consider is, look, everyone at Mattel right now will tell you that they were all behind Barbie from day one. The truth is, a bunch of people at Mattel were like, what the fuck is happening? We're going to destroy Barbie. Right. Like there was a lot of fear about what Greta Gerwig was doing. That we're making fun of Barbie. This is too far. We can't make these jokes about sex stuff. Like there was a lot of things that were like, we can't do this. And somehow it got done. And in success, everyone at Mattel is like, see, we can do these things with our brands that we didn't know. So I do think that now there is this idea of like, oh, like I've seen online, there's a whole campaign that Viggo Mortensen should play Skeletor. Here's the thing, John, that response right there is that I love He-Man, and I would argue that there are a lot of brands that you can find that like serious, what is the grounded, what is the heart? Shannon knows this from being in a writer's room with me. Whether it's ponies or fucking berries in Big Apple City, I'll be like, well, what's the real emotional story here? He-Man is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up loving this more than anything, but at the end of the day, if you watch The Toys That Made Us, it was a bunch of grown-ass men doing cocaine down the street at the bar going, how many weird names can we come up with? And coming up with the most ridiculous characters that they could. So it's kind of just a wild hodgepodge of a universe. And although I don't like Jared Leto's Joker, because Zack Snyder, whether I like him or not, was trying to do something that had an air of seriousness to it with his DC universe, and what Jared Leto was doing just didn't match.
Yeah.
That might match a movie where you're like, let's just fucking lean in to this crazy ass world. Like, there is a version of He-Man that is in the vein of what they did with Barbie that is so out there that Jared Leto doing what he does could work perfectly. Now, that is the rosiest version of this that I can say. Like, we're going to see the first trailer of this. We're going to see the first trailer of this, and I'm going to be like, I take it all back. What the fuck is this? But for now, I'm like, you know what? I don't honestly know what I would try and do if somebody approached me and said, let's do something new with He-Man. So I'm like, all right, Travis Knight, show us what you got.
He-Man. I just don't. I don't know if I see it, man. Yeah,
I'm waiting for them. If I want to know, here's the test of the He-Man live action movie.
Yeah,
is Orko in it?
Oh boy, yeah.
Because if Orko is in it, that is a strong indicator of the direction that this movie is going to go. The Dolph Lundgren He-Man movie, which is horrible but amazing. One of Courtney Cox's first performances, they were like, Orko is a step too far. Let's hire Billy Barty to be Gwildor, the weird elf, instead. So they sidestepped it. But if this movie, if we hear that, like, I don't know, freaking I'm trying to think of somebody.
Griffin Newman maybe voicing it over, yeah.
Yeah, who's going to be the voice of Orko.
Yeah.
Then you know that this movie's going to get wild.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought that Kevin Smith would had some strong kind of occasionally mature or adult overtones in some of the interactions. So I thought I think there is some real emotion that you can mine out of the He-Man stuff.
I'm not saying you can't, but I think that in the same way that in the same way that Barbie didn't treat Barbie seriously. I mean, we said this last week, but like the Barbie movie very specifically does not treat Barbie seriously. And in not treating Barbie seriously, was able to get to some really serious emotional places.
Right. That was the
if you were like, Barbie is sacred, Barbie is this, Barbie is this person who is like there was that version that I'm very glad that we didn't see where Amy Schumer was going to play Barbie. Yeah. But the Barbie that like wasn't perfect and didn't have the perfect body, and how did Barbie react to that? And that's that thing where you're like, that doesn't, that's trying to take something and be serious in a way that I don't feel like that. Barbie was like, hey, here's Barbie land. It's fucking wild. Barbies are perfect. Kens are all gonna like have a beach off. Like it was just silly, but in the silliness they got to a point. So I agree with you that you can get to why did He-Man work? Why was an entire generation obsessed with these characters? Aside from the fact that half of us were having a gay awakening and didn't know it yet with all those muscular action figures, but like a third of us. Yeah.
Evil Lynn was a hottie. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
But like I think that there is probably a story that you can tell. And given what Travis Knight did with Kubo and what Travis Knight managed to do with Bumblebee, I think he's someone who wants to find that. But I think being a little silly with it might be the way to go.
Do we get a She-Ra appearance, do you think?
No, I don't think you can. I think deals are, it's very...
Oh, the rights situation?
The rights situation is very wonky with that. Like, I would love it because when you found out that Adora was Adam's twin sister that had been taken away when she was born and taken to Etheria, boy, to me, that was that was soap opera. 8-year-old me.
And there's actually been, since the Masters of the Universe movie is kind of picking up steam, there has been more a fan art that has been coming online, like some really interesting. Oh my gosh, I think my chair just fell apart. Some fan art that's been coming up, and there is a fantastic. I wish I would have liked it now. There was a fantastic picture of Hordak, who's the villain from She-Ra.
Oh yeah,
and like legit scary looking. Like, man, if that is where they can eventually get to. Yeah. Fantastic. Would you be more excited for Jared Leto's participation if he had been offered Orko?
No. Hell no. Oh my God, no.
I think there's something
favorite. I love Orko, man.
No, I do. That's why I don't think he'd be. I think he'd be terrible to voice that character.
So I don't like the new Haunted Mansion movie that came out. I think that it was a miss, but I would argue that there was a good movie in there that got lost and everything. And Jared Leto doing the Hatbox Ghost in that movie, like Jared Leto loves to just be let loose and be a thespian psychopath. Like, he clearly enjoys that. He's done it enough times that you're like, let the man cook. Like, I don't know what he's doing over there, but let him cook. And Skeletor is a role that, like, if he's 100% committed to the absolute ridiculousness of that role, it's like, maybe he's the guy. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Filed again. Yeah, no, I don't know. All right, well, we'll see for sure. If he accepts the role or doesn't and turns it down like Josh Brolin, we will see in the end. All right, let's take
brain dead boob.
Let's take a quick break, and on the other side, we'll get into a little James Earl Jones and some other stuff going on in the world of geekdom here right after this.
Only a few others share my secret. Among them are Man-at-Arms, the Sorceress, and Orko.
All right. Well, sadly, we do have to talk about this, although I feel like it's a tribute more than just sadness. And that is, of course, earlier this week, we lost the incomparable, the incredible, the great, the one of a kind, the one in a million, really, James Earl Jones at 93 years old. The cause of his death has not been disclosed, but look, at 93, you know, it can be old age for all we know. But what an incredible actor who left a wonderful legacy in numerous types of films, TV shows, on stage, voiceover work. I mean, from Darth Vader to Hunt for Red October to Conan to The Sandlot to Will and Grace to so many things that he was a part of, and then coming back to voice Vader in the most recent Star Wars stuff. And I think he came back to do some stuff with The Lion King and Mufasa. So there is so much about what he's done over the last decades that coincides with all of us coming of age and discovering these incredible geek and nerddom stuff in our lives. So he is such a huge part of our fandom in terms of nerds and geeks. So it's sad to see him go, but what an incredible legacy. Michael, what are your thoughts on James Earl Jones, man?
I mean, I do feel like it's a tribute. Like, obviously it's a sad day when someone who has been so much a part of geek culture, clearly for us, passes away. But as my dad, who is in his 80s, says, like, 93 is not too bad. Yeah. Like, 93 is you led a life, and boy, he led a life. Like, I believe like his first role, or one of his first roles, was Dr. Strangelove.
Yes,
to go from Dr. Strangelove all the way to everything he's done, to being the voice of CNN.
Yeah,
you hear him every 10 minutes on CNN if you're watching the news. To, you know, the Darth Vader, Mufasa, Field of Dreams, Conan, Coming to America, like, just, and that doesn't even get into all of the stage work that he did. I mean, the man was an actor's actor. He was so amazing. You know, this week I've watched Field of Dreams, I've watched Lion King. I haven't gotten into Star Wars yet, but I've watched those plenty of times, so I'm pretty well aware of his performance there. Yeah, his voice was iconic. And he managed to, he had a sense of humor about it. He had a lot of fun with it, like the Will and Grace roles, like Big Bang Theory. Like he really had fun with the fact that he voiced these iconic characters, and loves telling the stories about, particularly with Darth Vader. I mean, I think it was like the New Hope was like what, 2 hours of work, about $7,000 for 2 hours of work. Came in, recorded his lines, got out of there. He was one of the only people on the set of Empire Strikes Back that knew the truth about Vader and Luke. I think that on set, famously, George Lucas had the actor say to Luke, "I killed your father," so that nobody would know. But James Earl Jones had to record the actual line, so he knew. So yeah, I mean, just for all of the things that we talk about, particularly we tend to talk about Star Wars a little bit on the Geek Buddies, and obviously my love of Disney and Disney animated movies is no secret. So between Mufasa and Darth Vader alone, pretty amazing. Although I will say, rewatching Field of Dreams this week, which I haven't watched in a long time, like that does give a run for its money. And his performance in Coming to America is one of the funniest parts of that movie, in a movie that is, I think, one of the top 5 comedies of all time. So
yeah, Shane, I mean, in so many different ways, he was successful in all these different types of films, genre of films. And of course, he's an EGOT, and his performance in Fences, which you can watch on YouTube now if you want to see that character that Denzel Washington played in the theatrical version from a few years ago. See James Earl Jones really bring that character to life through August Wilson's incredible words with Courtney B. Vance and that scene they have on there. Like, there's so much that he showed us as an actor. And, people go Vader, people go Lion King. And this is one of these actors that he acted through his voice, and sometimes people want to separate voice acting from acting. When you watch his journey as Vader over the first 3 films, and then you listen to him in Lion King, there is so much he is doing with his voice as an actor's actor. And this is a guy who overcame stutters, having a terrible stutter in high school to become an actor, and landed so many iconic roles and left so many great memories for all of us. From any quadrant you're from, you can talk about a James Earl Jones movie that affected you and performance that affected you. What are your thoughts on James Earl Jones here?
I mean, it seems like to me he kind of had the perfect career. Like, he got to a point after Star Wars, after Conan the Barbarian, where he probably could have done anything. He kept going back to the stage. He kept popping up randomly on television shows. This seemed like a performer. This felt like a consummate actor. This is someone who acted because they love to act. He didn't need to pop up in an episode of NYPD Blue. Like, he didn't need to do any of that. He did that stuff because he wanted to. And I think when, obviously acting is a very challenging career, and they always tell you, if you are in this for the money, get out. And I think even if Darth Vader hadn't happened, even if he hadn't achieved that incredible success that he did achieve, my guess is that he still would have acted. Because that's who he was. I mean, he was a true artist. And again, we like to talk about Vader, Mufasa, Thulsa Doom. I love him. I mean, for me, he was one of the first examples of geek mashup when he popped up in the Jack Ryan movies. So look at that. Han Solo and Darth Vader are having a civilized conversation, and they're actually working together. I mean, his one of his last scenes in The Sum of All Fears, or not The Sum of All Fears, Clear and Present Danger. One of his last scenes with Harrison Ford, truly heartbreaking. I mean, the guy was just so incredible. And yes, we always talk about his voice, because his voice was just that there won't be another James Earl Jones. But also when you get to see those clips, especially from Fences, his stage work, the way he just embodies a character, the power that man radiated. I mean, anytime you watch clips from a play, it sometimes can lose a little bit of the magic that you have when you're in the theater, because they're not made for camera. They're made for people sitting in the theater. Whenever you see him, or at least whenever I have seen him, those clips from a play, he doesn't lose an ounce of that power, because he was just such an incredibly magnetic performer. And obviously very, very sad that he's gone. But as Dr. Vogel already said, 93 ain't too bad.
93 ain't too bad. Listen, anybody who can deliver a performance wearing the wig that he wore in Conan the Barbarian and make it work, that's an actor. Because that wig is terrible. Wig.
Yeah, he was chilling. That was my first exposure to James Earl Jones, was the Conan situation, and then the Star Wars movies, right? Because I grew up with that at that time. Like I went in bass backwards to the Star Wars movies. Conan was the one that I was like, oh my God, because he was just a voice, right? It was the presence. Seeing him in Conan is when you really grasped him. And then when I got older, I started to go back and watch like Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars, which is a fantastic 1970s film with him and Billy D. Williams. I think Richard Pryor is in that as well. And talking about the Negro Leagues and what that experience was like. And then if you ever watch A Great White Hope, which is one of his most incredible performances, he's won a Tony for that on stage, did it on the theatrical version with Jane Alexander. That is one of the most amazing performances. And he's essentially playing Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight boxer, and the racism he endured. And he makes me cry in that movie like a baby by the end, because of what he is showing you culturally as a black man, what Jack Johnson endured in this stage version of his life. So there is so much to enjoy from him as an actor. And then you get into all the geek stuff and the nerd stuff, and then Field of Dreams, as Michael so well pointed out. So this is a consummate, as you said, Shannon, actor. And he said, I am still a novice at my age of 90. I am still a novice in the acting profession, because I just do it and I move on to the next thing, because it is about the work. And I love surrendering myself to the work. It's great stuff.
You want to do yourself a favor, go to YouTube and type in James Earl Jones Sesame Street and watch him. All it is James Earl Jones saying the ABCs. And that's all it is. There is nothing else to it. It's him. I have never watched somebody say the ABCs and have moments of discovery during a letter that I was like, never thought about that letter that way. He's like, W. And I was like, it is a W. Like, he just does the, like, watching him do it is truly amazing. And then my final thought on it is that I saw, every CNN and ABC and everybody, like, everywhere was posting these tributes and these things. And I don't know what interview, I don't know if it was 60 Minutes or Barbara Walters, but someone showed a clip of him, and it was from years ago, but where he just talked about his life and his career. And he sort of, for some reason, death came up. And he sort of said, death is kind of an amazing thing. It's something that we all have in common. It's something we're all going to experience at one point. And I think that is beautiful. Yeah. Or something along those lines. And it was like, and that combined, I sent you guys that clip. I was watching Field of Dreams, and that final moment, spoiler for a movie that's over 30 years old, but that final moment where James Earl Jones walks with shoeless Joe Jackson and the other baseball players and goes into the field, and his excitement about stepping into the unknown, and that like childlike giggle, Johnny, like you said when you texted, like that little giggle that comes out of his mouth as he sort of walks and disappears in the cornfield. That I was very happy that I watched that scene on the day that he passed away, because that's what made, to me, the day feel more like a tribute than a tragedy. It was like, because I kind of like watched that and I go, I feel like that's how he went. That man had a great life. He lived his days as fully as anybody ever could. And when he went and took that next step into whatever's next into that cornfield, he was excited and he's ready to discover whatever's next.
Yeah. For those of you who want to explore some of the lesser known titles, I would recommend Matawan, which is out on Criterion. If you haven't seen that, it's a fantastic film from him. I also think there's quite a number of things that he's done through his career, like Jefferson in Paris, where he really steps up. A Family Thing, I think, is a quiet little gem. If you haven't seen it, James Earl Jones and Robert Duvall find out that they were separated at birth and they have the same mother who's black. And Robert Duvall has lived a country white life, and his family is like kind of racist. And James Earl Jones has lived an ultra black life, and his family is kind of racist towards white people. And so it's about them coming together through the great Irma P. Hall and exploring this stuff and bringing the walls down and coming together. So it is a fantastic performance from him, a very touching performance from him. So just want to recommend some of these. If you guys haven't seen some of these other films that he's done, you should definitely, and Cry the Beloved Country is another great performance as well. So just throwing it out there. There's more than just the geek stuff. Go and really explore stuff if you want to see more of James Earl Jones. So Shannon, any final words here as we wrap to the next?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, you're the one that takes. So shout out to an incredible life at 93 years old. And of course, we'll be talking about him forever and passing him on generation to generation through his work for sure. All right, let's move on to some trailers here, Shannon. There's no easy way to transition out of that. Where shall we go, my friend?
I mean, I figure. No, I was gonna come up with something, but I got nothing.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is called growth and wisdom.
This is normally the moment that you saw my face go blank. You're normally looking at the Geek Buddies screen where I'm like, oh no, what do I do? Well, we get a trailer. We got trailers for 3 projects that are coming very, very soon. They're all coming out next month in October. And the first one is a trailer for a new HBO series called The Franchise. This is from Sam Mendes, Armando Iannucci of Veep fame, as well as fellow creator John Brown. This one has a dynamite cast. If you've ever wanted big budget Hollywood filmmaking to get the Veep treatment, that's what you seem to be getting with The Franchise. This one stars Himesh Patel from Station 11 and Yesterday, the always great Billy Magnuson. Lot of funny folks in this. Richard E. Grant. This is basically, Daniel Bruhl as well. Dolly Adafope, I believe her name is, from, what was the Shrill, the 80 Bryan series on Hulu.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, this is basically a group, a filmmaking crew trying to make a big budget superhero movie, and everything and anything goes wrong. Himesh Patel is the lead here. I believe he's playing the first AD. That's what I'm gathering from the trailer. But this one just looks really, really funny. And I think with the time of year that we're coming into, especially this year, something really funny to distract us is probably something we could all use. But Johnny, I'll throw it over to you first. What did you think of our first look at The Franchise?
This is a fantastic 90 seconds of a trailer. I mean, just because of those of us, so the 3 of us who have, known about these superhero movies, talked about them all the time, but also been on sets. Like, there's a lot here that you can connect to and understand, and the madness of it all. I think my favorite scene is when the actor comes out and they're all like, he's like, how's it going? Oh, it's great. So good. So much. Can't wait to get you on set. Right. Meanwhile, everything is falling apart behind the scenes. So the pressure of all of that, the fires going off, the producer reacting to everything that's happening, and then having Siri read the divorce stuff in the tone as he's getting his text messages. All of it is hilarious. Yes. And having the people from Veep be involved. And of course, I think the thick of it is the British version that did a Veep. Like, that makes me super excited that they're going to eviscerate this situation in a fun way without making it seem like it's dumb overall. And Richard E. Grant, I think, is going to be a fun addition to see what he does with all of this. Is he going to maybe evoke a little bit of that Loki stuff with what he's doing? I don't know. And Magnuson, I mean, come on. This guy, he's gold with whatever he does. And so it's fun to see him. And I've always been a fan of Himesh Patel since Yesterday. So I love to see him leading another project like this.
Mikey, you've worked on a franchise or 2 in your time. Does it look like they got this one right?
Yeah. There's a thing. Everyone in Hollywood loves to write stories about Hollywood. Like, we all, because everybody wants to write what they know. And there is so much drama and politics and insanity behind the scenes that everybody loves to do it. And oftentimes what you hear from executives, what you hear from studios is like, nobody wants to see that. Like, it's too inside baseball. Nobody wants to see these stories. Nobody wants to see stories about stories. Like, they want to see stories about politics. They want to see stories about, emergency rooms. They want to see procedurals. Nobody wants this. I think that the superhero franchise has become such a thing that this sort of sidesteps that problem. I think that Hollywood itself is so torn over superhero franchises. Half of Hollywood is like, franchises are our future, it's saving the box office, and half of Hollywood, as we often talk about, comes out and says that it's not cinema, superhero movies are destroying Hollywood, we don't make small movies anymore. So I think that in this case, it's time to make fun of the big budget Marvel, DC superhero movies. It just seems like it's the right time. It seems right. And I think it's going to work. What this kind of seems like it's going to do is, if you are a big fan of superhero franchise movies, as the three of us are, you can still watch this movie and go, yeah, that's pretty much what I think does happen behind the scenes. Like, we've all heard the stories. We've seen the directors spinning in and out of chairs. We've seen actors coming into roles, falling out of roles. We've seen the controversy. So as fans of a superhero franchise, watching this seems like it's going to be fun. And if you hate superhero franchises, it seems like this is going to be fun. So it kind of looks like this one defies the thinking of this is too inside baseball. I saw this trailer and I'm like, I can't wait to watch this. I think it's going to be great. So I'm very, very excited for it.
I mean, especially when you look at some of the inside baseball jokes that were in Deadpool and Wolverine. I think the movie going public and the TV going public have gotten to the point when Deadpool says "Death by Day player," they understood that joke. So I think this is probably the right time for a series like this. And aside from that, it just looks incredibly funny. But this one's coming out on HBO October 6th. That brings us to our next trailer. This is our, I'm assuming, final look at Venom: The Last Dance. I don't know what else we can say that we haven't said at this point. We all have our feelings about the live action division of Sony Pictures and how they handle the treasure trove of characters that they have. The first two Venom movies, incredibly successful. Will this one continue to be successful? My guess is yes. Will it be good? Who knows? Mikey, are you ready for this to be Venom's last dance?
Yes, I am. I will say, I watched this final trailer, and I don't know if this is just what it feels like to be beaten down so hard that you just give up. But I watched this trailer, and I just went, you know, this whole buddy comedy thing between Tom Hardy and the symbiote kind of being ridiculous and over the top, and Eddie, I want you to make me some eggs, and the whole thing, I was like, there's a world where this could have worked. There's a world where this, and look, yes, everyone in the comments, it clearly worked. It made a lot of money. So by Sony standards, it worked. I guess for me, I was watching this and going, there's a version where those first two movies could have been written 15% better than they were. And I think the movies would have made even more. I think we would be having a very different conversation about what the Sony live action Spider-Verse was if those movies were 15 to 20% better written, because Tom Hardy really does give this his all. He's 100% committed. So I, as someone who hated the first movie, despised the second movie. I think it's barely even a functioning film. Watched this trailer and went, man, you could have been something. You could have been a contender. Of course I'm going to go see it. Of course we're going to talk about it. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe this is the one where you just go, oh, they finally sort of kind of got it right. But I have a feeling that's not the response we're going to have once we see it. But something about this last trailer, I don't know, but the way it was cut, it made me nostalgic for something that never existed.
Johnny, you're a non-apologetic fan of Tom Hardy. Do you think they finally nailed Venom?
You know, I did my reaction to this earlier today as we're recording this, and it's up on the channel. And by the end of the trailer, I was like, these mother effers are going to make me care about this character, aren't they? Like, because you can tell that it seems like that Venom is going to sacrifice himself for Tom Hardy and for the Earth. And it seems like, you know, I'm with you to the end, all that stuff. And that is absolutely. And then Juno Temple saying you're going to have to separate in order for the world to survive, because Null is coming down. For those of you who don't know, Null is a big king of the symbiotes, and that's where he's from. So that's going to be a big deal. And it was revealed online today that Norman Reedus will be playing Null. And so that's an interesting choice. But like, this is clearly being set up to be an emotional send-off for this character and for Tom Hardy from the series, because I can't imagine he's going to continue with it. So we got some jokes that were half and half, but the overall, I mean, they got a Tom Cruise Mission Impossible joke. I think we're a few years too late on that one, but whatever, that was in there. And then we get this thing at the end, and that's where I was like caught up in. I'm like, wait, they're gonna kill him, possibly, Venom, and they're gonna make us like get emotional by the end of the movie. And maybe Kelly Marcel is like, look, I saw what they did in the first two films. I know what's gonna work. I'm hearing the criticism. Give me a chance to direct this film. I'm gonna show you the potential. And Michael, you might be right that maybe they get everything right in this movie because Kelly wanted to direct it in a certain way and understands it. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I've heard from numerous sources. I heard from numerous sources that goddamn bar from the end of Spider-Man No Way Home is in this goddamn movie. So they certainly will not. So they certainly will not get everything right. But fair. But that being said, and maybe it's the Juno Temple of it all. I think Juno Temple's fucking fantastic. So even her like just appearing on screen, I was like, yeah, maybe this is better. I think it would be the funniest thing if out of all of the live action garbage that Sony has done with the Spider-Man movies, if we all came out of Venom 3 and go, the last fucking one, they finally got it right. That would be, I almost want that to be the case just because it would, I would be so tickled by that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and Johnny brings up director Kelly Marcel, writer-director Kelly Marcel, and Kelly Marcel is also the writer of the first two movies. And as we have discussed previously, a lot of times your credited screenwriter, their work doesn't always make it to the screen. A lot can happen.
Or it gets cut off.
I saw a tweet recently from somebody, a writer friend or a writer that I follow, and it was like, if you ever blame a screenwriter for a movie being bad, or a writer on a show who is working under a showrunner for their script being bad, you don't know how the industry works. And so you're right. There is a level of like, you know, you're someone who wrote two movies, saw what directors did with your script, said, fuck, everyone thinks that I did that. And then you get the opportunity to go, all right, I'm putting it all on the table. Like, I wrote it and I'm directing it. I'm making all the calls here. It'll be, I think it's going to be bad, but I'm kind of interested to see it.
Well, and if the title is any indication, it's the last time you'll have to do this. Yeah. This version of the character. Venom: The Last Dance comes out October 25th. And that brings us to our last trailer, which I imagine my fellow co-hosts are going to have a lot to say. We got the teaser for The Apprentice. This is Sebastian Stan playing a young Donald Trump. Jeremy Strong of Succession fame is playing his mentor, attorney Roy Cohen. This is directed by Ali Abazi. So this one made the rounds in the festivals. It was at Cannes. It was at Toronto. They had a hard time finding a distributor for some reason in an election year. But a lot of the reviews coming out say the movie is safe, okay, unremarkable, but the performances by Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong are really the things that are getting this film, getting it noticed, outside from the timeliness of its release. So Johnny, I'll throw it over to you first. What did you think of our first look at The Apprentice?
Well, I do want to give a shout out to Jeff from the Hot Mic, because Jeff wrote a review of the film because he had saw it at TIFF before the trailer came out. So I read his review, and he was saying things like, oh, this is actually going to humanize Trump. I don't know if people are going to be ready for this. And we've been following this story because one of the big reasons why it didn't get a distributor, Shannon, is because of Dan Snyder, the former owner of the Washington football team, who is such a prick, but he gave money to the film. And when he had heard, without even watching it, that it wasn't necessarily positive about Trump, because there is a rape scene of Ivana in the film that is graphically shown, he wanted to stop the film from being distributed. So he was like essentially refusing to sign off on it. But all the positive reviews that have come out, there have been some positive come out, have from the festivals changed his mind about it, and they found a distributor, so much so that they have moved the release up a few weeks to release this thing a month before the election, I think. October 11th, I think it is when it's so a few weeks before the election. So that is an interesting situation. But from the trailer, the performances here look incredible. And the things you see Jeremy Strong saying are the things that if you watch Donald Trump in a debate, so to speak, you can see him doing the exact things that Roy Cohn is telling him to do in the film. So this is going to be a fascinating and challenging film for a lot of people to watch. But it looks like I'm going to enjoy this one. And Ali Abbasi as the director looks like he's really found the way into telling this story. And I'm always a fan of Jeremy Strong getting to do more because of how much I loved him in Succession. So, and Sebastian Stan now doing Tommy Lee and Donald Trump. I mean, you couldn't ask for two more diametrically opposite people and looking like he nailed it and knocked it out of the park. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Mikey, you ready to be somebody's apprentice?
I'm depending on how things go in about 55 days, I feel like this movie is either is 1 year to 4 years too early.
Okay.
And the reason is because it just I can't help but look at this trailer and in the back of my mind go through what everybody on both extremes on the Twitter sphere is going to do with this movie. So you're either going to have the people that are like, look at this, this is who you're voting for, go see this movie, it's so important. Or this is a hatchet job and they're shoving it into our faces a month before the election. Liberal Hollywood does it again. Fuck these guys. Like, it's just like, this is an interesting story. Like, if you don't know, I mean, forget like Bucky playing Trump, which does look fascinating. The movie is called The Apprentice is because this movie is saying like if Trump is Darth Vader, Roy Cohn is like the real life Emperor Palpatine.
Yes.
I mean, Roy Cohn is a monster. I mean, and I think that this movie really sort of dives into that. And I think there's a really interesting story here. Like Roy Cohn worked for McCarthy.
Yeah. Joseph McCarthy. Yep.
Like during all of that shit and the Red Scare, which is one of like the worst points in American politics.
Yep.
And then that man went on to basically mentor Trump, who went to become president for this period of American politics, which no matter where you are on the political spectrum is pretty crazy. So, you know, there is this sort of, this is like this whole Palpatine return, like Roy Cohn's shadow over American politics is long, and was just like a despicable human being. I mean, you know, died of AIDS and said he had a liver disease till the day he died, like refused to tell anyone he had, like, it was just like he's a fascinating character. And so I think like this, I watched this trailer and I go, this looks like a fascinating movie. And this looks like a fascinating way to which is true, but like the connecting just this character that sort of turned Trump into, because John, you're right. You watched the trailer I watched the trailer this morning.
Yeah.
Having watched the debate 2 nights ago, and everything that Roy Cohn is training Trump to do, you're like, yeah, check, check, check. He's done all of that in the past 48 hours. Yep. So it is fascinating, but I just feel like coming out right now in the middle of everything that we're dealing with, it doesn't do the movie any favors, because you can't actually just watch the movie as a piece of art and say, is this a fascinating story? It just becomes fodder for the political machine that is in full swing right now. So I just think, I understand why they were like, let's get this out now when it's top of mind for everybody, but I just think it's not the best move long-term.
Well, see, and it's funny that you bring that up in terms of the timeliness of the release date. I mean, in the past, films that are about someone that is still very much currently in the limelight, politically speaking, they haven't always done that great. Like I'm thinking specifically of like when they when Oliver Stone directed Josh Brolin as George W. Bush at the very tail end of that administration, which you know, I saw that movie. It's not a great movie. Also, United 93 that came out 5 years after 9/11. Which was a fantastic film and absolutely released a decade too early. Like it did not do well at the box office because people that wound was still way too raw. Like looking at this trailer, I mean, taking the reviews aside, the performances of those two, and Maria Bakalova from the Borat sequel is playing Ivana. The performances of Jeremy Strong and Sebastian Stan, they both look really good. But I 100% agree with you, Mikey, that in terms of releasing this a month before the election seems like financially it's probably not doing you any favors.
I think movies, I think movies about historical events, about historical figures are really important. I think movies are art, and I think that art is a way that we sort of process and synthesize the world that we live in. So I think they are important, but I do think there's something about, we can't fully process something through art that we are still processing in real life at the moment. It's like, I think Selma is a great movie.
Yeah.
I think if Selma had come out a year and a half after the civil rights movement, I think people couldn't, like, you can't see that on screen because you're actually living it. And I kind of like, that's how I feel about this right now. So we'll see. I'm going to see it. I'm curious. And I do find Roy Cohn to be a horribly fascinating character. So I'm going to see it, but yeah, I think you're probably right. I have a feeling this movie's not going to do great at the box office, because who wants to escape to go sit in a theater to watch a movie about Trump when you literally can't escape him in real life right now?
No. Well, yeah, and it might make him sympathetic. That's the other part of this, possibly, because clearly from the trailer, he's a young guy trying to get in with this dude who's so successful, and he's essentially essentially putting himself out there to be used by Roy, and he is overwhelmed by Roy's. This is like Wall Street. You're watching Gecko with Charlie Sheen. You're watching Michael Douglas with. That's what you're watching. That's what it feels like. And people might watch this and go, "Well, now I feel sympathy because I've been through that." And that's an interesting situation. Yeah.
Well, and to your point though, that's what's going to happen. So everyone on the left is going to say this is a horrible movie because it makes you sympathize with Trump. It makes you feel bad for Trump. Like, we can't. Oh God, now like swing voters are going to feel this way if they see this movie. And everyone on the right is going to say, oh, so like Trump is the devil. Trump is the like again, like you can't. That's kind of my point. Is it's impossible to separate this movie from what we are currently in the mess of. So I don't know. I don't know if it's the right time. I wish it had come out later, but it definitely looks fascinating.
Yeah. And it is coming out October 11th.
Yeah, and I think it's coming out 1 week early in certain cities before it goes national, October 11th. So we will see. That's not that far away. So we will see on that one. All right. Anything else, Shannon, on the trailer front? Shall we take a break?
That is it.
Okay. All right. That's on the other side. We'll talk all kinds of stuff going on with Marvel, including Destin Daniel Cretton and Spider-Man 4, and then also hit some of the comic book stuff with DC and Josh Brolin right after this. All right, well, let's not waste any time. Destin Daniel Cretton, that's what's happening here. Shang-Chi's director. This is an exclusive from Boris Kitt over at the Hollywood Reporter. He is in talks. It's not official yet, but he's in talks to sign on to direct Spider-Man 4. This will be an interesting situation. He's the fourth director to take over a Spidey solo feature film. John Watts having, of course, done the previous three. Mark Webb doing two of them. And then, of course, Sam Raimi doing that trilogy. Sony and Marvel apparently had no comment at the time. Chris McKenna and Eric Summers are back to write the script for this one, with Feige and Amy Pascal there being a part of it as well. And this one apparently is going to shoot early next year. They are going to make this thing happen quickly. I imagine they're trying to put this out between the two Secret Wars movies, as we've been speculating here on the channel, or on the show rather. So interesting situation. Shannon, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, in terms of his visual style, I think he's a no-brainer to take over for John Watts. I think it'll be interesting knowing like what Tom Holland's commitments to Sony and the MCU are going to be. Because is this going to be a situation where Destin Daniel Cretton is directing a new Spidey trilogy? Or is he just doing this one? Is Tom Holland going to be done with his solo Spider-Man films after the fourth one? Are they maybe going to do that handoff to Miles Morales that we have often talked about? The only downside I see is just Shang-Chi. Just because I do think scripting-wise, I think the third act of Shang-Chi wasn't perfect, but I thought it was directed really, really well. I think visually, I think Destin Daniel Cretton will knock a Spidey sequel out of the park. It's going to be really interesting, again, just to see if it does take place in between the next 2 Avengers movies. Does this take place on Battleworld? There are a lot of question marks in the air, but I think the biggest loser right now is just Shang-Chi. I mean, that's not to say that not another director couldn't come in and direct a Shang-Chi sequel, but I would think Destin Daniel Cretton feels a little bit of ownership with that character, along with Simu Liu, and that he would want to see how that would play out. But again, maybe Marvel's plans just don't include a solo Shang-Chi sequel right now.
Yeah, Michael, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, he was originally going to do Kang Dynasty, but of course they moved him off to move in the Russo brothers. And apparently they must be liking what he's doing on the Wonder Man series that he's doing right now with Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. So what are your thoughts on this?
Look, I think taking a big step back and kind of jumping off of what Shannon said, you can see what's wrong with the multiverse saga on the whole. When you look at the fact that we're talking about not getting a Shang-Chi 2. By the time we got to this point in phases 1, 2, and 3, we had 3 Iron Man movies, 3 Captain America movies, 3 Thor movies, 2 Guardians movies. Like, all of these characters had ample time to grow. So as we're stepping into, Doomsday, the fact that we haven't spent more time with Shang-Chi, that we haven't had a story about him and his sister really going at it as she sort of takes over the 10 rings. Like, there's a reason why all of these characters don't pack the punch that they've packed in the first 3 phases. And it's not because they're not good characters. I think, like, what's great about Daniel Destin Cretton taking over this movie is Shang-Chi's great. Shannon's right. It's not perfect. But out of all of the phase 4 and 5 movies, like, it's definitely one of the stronger ones that people got really excited about. And Simu Liu as Shang-Chi was great and charming. And, like, I wish that we knew more about his journey leading into Doomsday. So I think it's a shame that we're not going to get Shang-Chi 2 leading up to this. I think that Daniel Destin Cretton will be the guy that directs that. But I think him stepping into Spidey 4, is, Johnny, like you said, like, it shows, look, Marvel was clearly very happy with Shang-Chi, enough that they gave him Kang Dynasty. Then everything happened with Kang Dynasty, and he was overdoing Wonder Man, and they're clearly happy about that. So him kind of being one of those Marvel in-house guys that they're like, yep, we trust you, we like you, you can do Spidey. I think that's a sign of confidence. I think that people generally are excited that he's the one doing it. Yeah, look, I think at this point, look, there's been so much made out of Marvel wanting Spidey 4 to be a ground-based Spidey movie with Daredevil and Kingpin, and really having him just, like, living his life as Peter Parker on his own for the first time, and Sony really wanting to go full multiverse. And it feels like timing has erred in Sony's favor. I think that I think that Marvel had an idea at some point that they were going to do Spidey 4 pre-Doomsday, have this really grounded Spidey movie that was then going to lead into Doomsday and Secret Wars, and probably have Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire and everybody sort of involved in this in some way, shape, or form. And I think the timing of it all and figuring it out, maybe Sony dragging their feet on purpose, led to where we are now, which is Marvel's hands are tied. If Doomsday goes the way that we think it goes, a Spider-Man movie between Doomsday and Secret Wars, maybe a little bit of it is ground-based, but it pretty much ends up in a kind of multiverse mess. Could be a good mess, could be a bad mess. We'll see. And as far as that goes, I think this is where things sort of shift and change. I think we've all been sitting here going, I think most geeks on Twitter are like, ground-based Spider-Man's the way to go. We don't want another No Way Home. We don't want this. We want ground-based.
Right.
The second that you're like, this is between these 2 movies, I kind of changed my tune. I'm kind of like, all right, well, okay.
Yeah.
If Doomsday ends up collapsing the multiverse or nearly collapsing the multiverse, then yeah, I want a Spider-Man movie where you can have Andrew Garfield in it, you can have Tobey Maguire in it, and that kind of speaks to the fact that if they were going to let Daniel Destin Cretton do an Avengers movie, a Kang Dynasty that is so huge, that it sort of also leans, okay, well, they were going to let him do that. This Spider-Man movie is now probably going to be huger than they were anticipating. So they're going to give it to the guy that they were going to give an Avengers movie to.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I know one of the scoopers, Can We Get Some Toast, said that it's going to be a ground-based movie and that Peter's supposed to be like 19 or 20 years old. I mean, not set in 19 or 20, coming out of high school.
Guys, that's me, Spider-Man.
The whipper. And so
I love this idea.
So, you know, and this is him applying for college. So I think it will start out ground-based and then go. So that seems to be like what we might be diving into, because I'd be really surprised if they just start on Battleworld, Spider-Man on Battleworld. That'd be so strange. So maybe that's the approach they go down with this. Yeah.
I mean, if there's a ground to start from.
Yeah, right.
I'm making some assumptions here. I'm assuming Tom Holland is in Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars.
How would he not be? Yeah.
Right. So if he's not, then the whole concept of we're just starting on Battleworld is not like, oh, well, we ended Spider-Man 3 and he was living in an apartment on his own and all of a sudden he's on Battleworld. Like, he, as a Peter Parker who nobody knows that he's Spider-Man, will be in Doomsday. Yeah. And if the entire multiverse does collide, which again, it's a big if. We keep saying that because we've read Secret Wars. Marvel could completely go in a different direction. But if the end of Doomsday is the multiverse collapses, in the same way that the end of Infinity War was Thanos won and snapped out half the galaxy, then if Spider-Man 4 is between the two movies, unless you're going to do some flashback thing, Spidey's where he is. Like, there's no ground to start from. Like, there's no multiverse. So you're right. Like, they might not do it exactly that way. And maybe you will start with him ground based, but the events of Doomsday will then lead to him being somewhere else. But yeah, I think that we're in for I think Sony's getting what they want. My guess is Sony's getting what they want, and you're building, and to Shannon's point, which makes me feel like this isn't the beginning of a new trilogy. Like, I think Spider-Man 4 does more work to build out this big ending finale of Phase 6 of Phase 6 than it does to launch a new Spider-Man. And if you're going to have a Secret Wars where you have a bunch of Spider people doing stuff, it does also give you the opportunity, if Tom Holland is kind of like, I've done enough Spider-Man movies, a handoff into a Miles Morales, and then while the mutant saga starts and kicks off, you start a new Spider-Man franchise with Miles. Yeah,
that seems to make the most sense, is that this is the end for Tom Holland after these Secret Wars movies, because he said numerous times, I don't want to be doing Spider-Man into my late 30s, you know, so he's made it very clear that he wants to hand it off, and so we will see on that front. All right, so what about the DC side of things? Let's hit this thing. Josh Brolin has turned down now playing Green Lantern. He had been the offer there. So is this next man up? Is McConaughey now on the clock? Is that what we're looking at here in this situation? Or do you gentlemen think they're going to maybe reevaluate the age difference here, maybe look at some other actors now that Josh Brolin is not going to be a part of this? What are your thoughts on that, Mikey?
Shannon, what were you going to say about?
Sorry, man.
Well, no, I was going to say in that article, they did say McConaughey is not going to be doing it either. So McConaughey,
I didn't know. You didn't catch that. My bad. All right, go ahead.
That he's not going to be Hal Jordan. They didn't say anything about Ewan McGregor, though.
Yeah. Oof.
I don't know. I mean, as I said on Twitter, and as I said to you guys, like, I liked the Josh Brolin of it all. I thought that sounded great to me. So that not being what it is now, I'm kind of like, I don't know where they're going to go with it, but I just hope they don't default to like a Chris Pine or some of these others that they've like I want an older, I don't want someone who fits the mold of what most people think Hal Jordan is, because I don't think that's what they're doing. Like, I think in this DC universe, Hal has had his day and he's training the next guy. And I think that Chris Pine and some of the other names that are being thrown around just feel like someone who's just like, okay, yeah, it's Hal Jordan. Like Josh Brolin, even McConaughey, who would have been a wild choice. Like, I'm a big fan of True Detective, and a Hal Jordan who's a little bit of a loose cannon, a little like McConaughey would have brought something in. I guess that's what it is. Josh Brolin was interesting because I think he really fit the mold. McConaughey was interesting because he really would have brought that McConaughey-ness to the role. And so I just hope that they still give us someone where we're like I would rather see who lands the role of Hal Jordan and go, huh,
yeah,
okay, than go, okay, yeah, I see why they went with that guy.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if there's another Josh Brolin type that's out there. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, is there anyone that leaps to mind? I mean,
fanboy casting is my favorite thing. Because the moment that they said Brolin wasn't going to do it, which I'm with Mike, I was disappointed because I was like, God, who do you get? Now, a lot of these folks, you know, they may not be available, especially the first guy that popped into my mind. I was like, all right, if you can't get Josh Brolin, I mean, I think Carl Urban would be an interesting, could be an interesting Hal Jordan in that vein. I think he's probably going to be busy shooting a show where he's blowing up superheroes' heads. So I think he's probably off the table. And another one that popped up, and I don't know if he would be available either, is Joel Edgerton. Like, I think Joel Edgerton has kind of been primed to become a big movie star for a long time.
And he, I mean, if you watched it, Dark Matter was really good.
Yeah.
I think Joel Edgerton, I think he's not as old, but I mean, I do think he's in his early 50s. But I do think he exudes that mentor vibe that it seems that's the direction they're going.
Yeah. I will take umbrage with you saying they're defaulting to Chris Pine. Pine is a perfect Hal Jordan, for fuck's sake. I don't
it's a different Hal Jordan.
Default.
He's perfect. I wouldn't even go so far as to say he's perfect for Hal Jordan. He is a good choice for a kind of Hal Jordan that does not seem to be the Hal Jordan that they are doing.
Yeah, it seemed like they're saying they want to go like the True Detective route. Two detectives here with him and him counseling Stewart and all of that. So interesting stuff. All right, so I guess we'll see what happens with that. What other Marvel stuff or DC stuff do you guys want to hit on and talk about? Because I mean, I want to bring up the Beau DeMayo stuff, but I don't know what you guys want to discuss. Anything you want to?
You're the boss, and you brought it up. You can't open the box and then put it back. So I just wanted to make
sure before we get into it that because I'm going to bring up his tweets. I don't have them separated out, so I want to bring up his tweets. But like, I just want to make sure we wrapped it on that before we got in. Are we good? Anything else? No,
I think.
Okay, let's do this fucking thing. All right, so let's take a list. This is Beau DeMayo dropped a 4-tweet thread here talking about what the original plans were for Multiverse of Madness. As you can see here, he is responding to the comicbookmovie.com article here of what the original story details were supposed to be for Multiverse of Madness. Of course, a film that the three of us aren't necessarily that high on, just to be kind in describing our opinions on that film. But he responded with, correct. OG drafts did her justice. He's talking about Scarlet Witch. Wanda was with Strange, recovering after Westview, feeling bad about what she did. She helps him. Wong and Chavez, who she tutors, beat Nightmare across multiverse, where she also sees her variants, happy with her kids. Still, Wanda resists, and she, not Chavez, helps Strange save the day against Nightmare, who turns out to be a Darkhold corrupted Strange variant. Dark Tor, maybe. Also, she used her experiences in WandaVision to warn Chavez about abusing her power. Only after saving the day, unable to resist finding a multiverse where she can be with her kids, does Wanda, sobbing, break from Strange and accidentally beheads Wong, who tries to stop her from fleeing into the multiverse. That was the film's cliffhanger. Made far more sense. And even when she flees, Wanda is torn up by guilt in a classic comic book fashion and keeps apologizing to Strange as she vanishes and leaves him with his dead friend's body. And then someone said, I feel sick. That's the movie we and Scarlet Witch deserved instead of a movie that acted like WandaVision didn't happen. Beau says, wait until I cover what could have been for X-Men 97 seasons through seasons 5. He's not done, ladies and gentlemen. Holy shit. This man is setting it all on fire, for God's sakes. But let's deal with Multiverse of Madness. Who wants to go first on this one? I don't even know who to pick on this one. Shall we go? All right, Shannon, you take it away. Mikey looks hesitant. Go ahead, Shannon.
So it is very easy to look at the 4 tweets and to be like, what a better movie that would have been.
Yes.
Because there was a version of Multiverse of Madness that we got. There was a version that was going to turn out correctly.
Yeah.
That was, no one sets out to make a bad movie. I think, again, looking at what we got versus what we could have gotten, of course, what we could have gotten sounds so much better. Right. I think the thing that really kind of stands out reading the article is that Scott Derrickson, who I think deserves a lot of credit for getting that first Doctor Strange movie right.
Hell yeah.
That he left because Marvel wanted to do one thing, he wanted to do another. And it sounds like what he wanted to do is the movie that Beau DeMayo is talking about. So knowing that, again, according to the article, that Michael Waldron came in and pitched a different idea of Wanda as the bad guy. Waldron, who, according to the article, had not watched WandaVision. That seems like a terrible, terrible judgment to have made. And to be like, you know what, I would be curious when this conversation happened. Had WandaVision been released yet? Like, did they know the lightning in the bottle that they had captured with the majority of that series? Because doing the character, I mean, I do agree with his verbiage that they kind of did the character dirty, because where we ended with her, it seemed like more of a natural transition to go with what was originally planned versus what we got, which is her going full heel. Now, there is a version where her going full heel would have worked. It's just not what we got.
Yeah. Michael, I like, just to be an idiot, I guess, or a fanboy, I liked this 4-tweet thread possibility. And of course, they used some of the quotes from Scott Derrickson, who said, clearly, not in response to this, but said it earlier, that there were creative differences legitimately. Sometimes that's used to cover up stuff. He's like, no, it was. There was a lot of push and pull. I wanted one thing. They wanted something else. Maybe Waldron, it seems like, as well, wanted something else. And in the end, it just did. I didn't like what they were doing. And for those of us who don't like the movie, Derrickson is right. For those of us, for the people who did, and it made $975 million, they like what they got. So what are your thoughts on these comments from Beau DeMayo?
My thoughts are, look, I don't like Multiverse of Madness. I think that what is outlined in those 4 tweets is a better movie. Yes. And from what I've heard from other people, not in this level of detail, but what I've generally heard is that there was a script for Multiverse of Madness that was really good, and then Sam Raimi came in and got to do whatever Sam Raimi wanted. And if you are a big Sam Raimi fan, you liked that. And if you're not a big Sam Raimi fan, by and large, you don't. But like and you can watch Elizabeth Olsen's interviews talking about playing Wanda in Multiverse of Madness. It's very clear that she was frustrated. There's frustration to go around. So sure, this sounds like a better movie. I don't know what that gets any of us. The movie that we got. We're not getting a second. We're not getting a second at bat. We're not going to go back and remake the movie.
Over spilled milk is what you're saying.
And well, I feel like what I would say to anybody, including Beau DeMayo, is I think that, you know, if you've watched what Beau has released, some of the videos that he has on his OnlyFans and some of the things he said, like he has a lot of, I think, again, in the world of he said, she said, and who has the receipts, he seemingly has a lot of really valid criticisms of Marvel and the way that things went on X-Men and the way that things went on Blade. And those things seem really specifically tied to the way he feels he was treated at Marvel and some of the issues that he sees as endemic at Marvel. So when he talks about some of the behaviors that he saw on Blade, some of the ways that Marvel executives and Marvel people treated him on X-Men, I feel like when he's talking about those things, he's talking specifically about his grievances, and we're going to see how all of that pans out. Yeah. When you just start saying, here's everything that I know, here's all of the tea, it does, like, I'm like, what is a shitty version of Multi-Madness that we got have to do with what happened on X-Men 97? So I think, like, in the big scheme of things, when you're in these David and Goliath style fights with big studios, it's like you need to be really strategic in what you're saying and what you're not saying. And although I agree with both of you, this sounds like a much better version of Multiverse of Madness, I don't know what spilling all of Marvel's dirty laundry does for anybody.
Yeah, it's almost Trumpian in that way. He's like, let me tell you what happened with Multiverse of Madness. And he's like going to go off and wait till you hear about season 2 through season 5. And it's like all over the place. But I think you're right. I think what he's doing is playing the game of let me get the fans on my side by talking to the Marvel fans who are dissatisfied by what's going on with Marvel. And that'll gloss over some of the possibly, allegedly nefarious stuff I did at the job. And then people will kind of push that away and focus more on this because they're waiting. So in essence, he's trying. I think it seems like he's trying to plan for life after Marvel, while still kind of always still talking about Marvel. So
well, and what's interesting is I know the size of the NDA that I had to sign when I worked a week on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and it was considerable.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what a creative on the level of a head writer, of a showrunner like Beau DeMayo, I can only imagine the type of NDA that they are having to sign. And my guess is that him talking about some of these details might be violating it. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what the legal recourse is for that. And granted, as Vogel already said, this movie is come and gone. Like, it doesn't matter now. But my guess would be you continue to spill details, there could be a case being mounted against you. But again, I could be incorrect.
I have a friend who went to Lucasfilm earlier this week, and she said the NDA she had to sign just to have coffee in the lunchroom was massive, just to be on the campus. So yeah, I can only imagine, as you said, Shannon,
she used blue milk,
so to speak. All right, anything more? Shall we wrap up here? Okay, I think we're good. That's what we got, Lisa. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Geek Buddies. We appreciate it madly. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's @geek_buddies. On Instagram, at @the_geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's @Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, it's Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you'd like to follow Mr. Vogel, it is @MKToon. If you'd like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is @The Rocha Says.
Mike.
And we would like it if you smash that like button below, subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page, check out all the amazing content he has got there, leave your comments below. What do you think of He-Man? What do you think of Donald Trump? What do you think of James Earl Jones? What do you think of Spider-Man? Let us know in the comments below. If you're listening to us on a podcast, leave us some comments and stars so we go up in the rankings there. And as always, the best thing you can do is retweet this video, post it on your socials, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
There you go. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week with another brand new episode of the
Geek
Buddies.